Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. I know you're here for the lunch. There is such a thing as a free lunch. It's today. We're going to be brief. We know you've got a packed agenda, but this is a really important and, frankly, a bit of a celebratory moment. And so I really want to get to our speakers who are going to say just a few words, and then we can mingle and get some food and all of that. So, Conservation International, my name is Sanjan. I'm the CEO of Conservation International. And we and our team have been the chair of this advisory group for deforestation-free, what's called the Deforestation-Free Finance Initiative. And you might have heard the news yesterday and the day before that, with many countries, 120 or so countries around the world agreeing to end deforestation by 2030. Of course, the teeth in it is where the financial sector ultimately leans. And we can either have the financial sector work to help us, or frankly, no matter what we do, won't be enough because they will overwhelm you with the amount of funding that goes into commodity-driven deforestation, as is the case today. I think most financial institutions want to do the right thing. I think it's important as a group we send a signal of what that right thing looks like. And so today, we're happy to launch the roadmap to helping key financial institutions navigate the path towards getting the financial sector on the path of helping rather than hurting the fight to end deforestation, ideally before 2030. If you ever try to get a bunch of people to agree on something in your family, in your work, or beyond, you know how hard it is. And I just want to make sure I acknowledge the amount of work that all of the people here, Global Canopy in particular, deserve a really strong word of appreciation, as well as the Conservation International team and the leadership from the UK government in getting us to this point, to get 30-plus financial institutions to agree on this pathway. And we want more to join. So this is a great moment, this is an important moment, and this is the one that really ultimately counts, because commitments are easy, but how money flows is what's going to make the difference in whether this one sticks or not. So with that, I want to turn over and start with you, Lord Zach Goldsmith, the UK Minister for the Pacific and the Environment. I just want to say one quick word about him. Obviously, he knows a lot about the financial sector. His heart truly belongs to nature. So with that, can you say a few words?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Should I stay sitting? You're going to be standing? I'll sit. I'm going to sit. There's been a lot of standing today. Look, thank you so much. I'm going to keep it quite brief, but I just wanted to put this conversation in context, if I could, because yesterday there was a lot that was said. There were a lot of promises made, a lot of commitments that were secured. And Sanjay just talked a bit about the financial commitment, and it is unprecedented. There's no doubt 12 billion plus of public finance, around just over 7 billion from the philanthropic sector, from the private sector. Big commitment to indigenous people, which I think is absolutely critical. It's always left off these things, but it's there. It's bang in the heart of what we're trying to achieve. Probably the most cost-effective and effective way of saving large amounts of land is by backing the people who've been doing that in the face of terrible threats for generations. A big focus on the Amazon, really backing the leadership we've seen from countries like Colombia, whose appetite, I think, to do the right thing is just huge. And of course, the Congo Basin as well, which is an area that always gets left behind. There has not been enough focus, but it is one of the most important places on Earth. We lose the Congo Basin, it's game over for 1.5 degrees, it's game over for net zero or anything approaching it. So on the financial side, there's been a really big movement. But as has just been said, the amount of money that we could get, even in our wildest dreams, from the public sector and from philanthropy is always going to be dwarfed by the power of the market. The market is so much bigger. And for as long as the market is taking us in the wrong direction, for as long as the market cannot properly account for the cost of destruction or the true value of the magic of the natural world on which all of us depend, then we are going to be playing catch up and we're going to be losing. So that's why this may not be the sexiest part of the announcements that happened yesterday, but the commitments from the private sector are absolutely critical. And I really do want to heap praise on the next speaker, Fiona, and the Deforestation Advisory Committee, I always get that wrong, who have worked so amazingly over the last few months with a kind of particular kind of hockey stick moment at the end, getting financial institutions and so on board. And it just matters so much. We've got financial institutions overseeing assets in the region of $9 trillion. We've got, in addition to that, a slightly separate part of the process, but we've got the biggest commodity buyers in the world to commit to not buying commodities that are grown at the expense of forest and causing massive deforestation. We've had the kinds of signals from the private sector, which, number one, I think will create a snowball effect. We'll see more and more momentum. We'll see more and more of those bodies, institutions signing up. I think they'll feel they have to. But the effect it's had on some of the countries as well is immediate. So there are countries that we probably would not have got to sign that incredible pledge. We heard from it's now 130 countries committing to end deforestation by 2030. If we hadn't had that signal from the financial sector, from the private sector, there's a recognition that we can all wag our fingers, and NGOs and governments and everyone else can complain and ask countries to do the right thing, but it's the market that they're responding to. And there's a clear direction of travel, the signal of which was put out loud and clear yesterday, thanks to the help of so many people in this beautiful pavilion today. And that is what enabled us to get some of those countries over the line. So this is not the end, this is the beginning. We've got a year of the presidency. Our job now is to grow and grow and grow those commitments that we saw, but even more importantly, to inject true accountability, to make sure that everything that was pledged, everything that was promised is properly and fully delivered. And that's what we'll be obsessively working on over the next year and beyond. But I want to stop there and again just repeat my thanks, because you've been brilliant.
Thank you, Lord Goldsmith. Next up is Fiona Reynolds. Fiona is the CEO at the UN Principles for Responsible Investment. And Fiona told me something amazing today. She said that the group started in 2006. 2006. Think about how long it's taken, how hard they've worked to get us to this moment. And a group has slowly grown in that time, and I think she agrees that it's finally seeing the kind of attention that it absolutely deserves to see. So first and foremost, I know you haven't been there since 2006, but you've been there for at least a decade. Thank you for your work. Share some thoughts.
Well, thank you. I often say that it's taken a long time to be an overnight sensation. So thank you all for being here. And I do think that one of the really important things following on from what Zach said is that it does really take the private sector and the public sector to work together. So we also need, in the private sector, in the investment sector, we need the right signals from government. And we need the right policy so that we can then deploy the capital that's required. And I think that what was great about yesterday was the very, very clear signals that came from government. And now, the private sector and the public sector can come together to really accelerate the whole issue of dealing with deforestation, which is important because I do think very quickly that from the investment community side, we've been trying to deal with the issues of climate change for quite some time, but a lot of the focus has really been on emissions reduction in terms of how do we work with energy companies, etc., about moving from fossil fuels to renewables. Of course, that's really important, and we need to continue that work. But we also know that we aren't going to get to net zero unless we also tackle the issue of deforestation. In actual fact, we just won't get there unless we tackle both issues. So it's now great to see that so many investors are starting to pay much more attention to biodiversity issues, to nature-based solutions, and to deforestation. And so, as was mentioned, which was a really a high point for yesterday for all of us, was that over 30 investors who represent $8.7 trillion US in assets under management, so a huge amount of the institutionally managed money that's out there, publicly committed to begin a journey to deforestation-free finance by signing the finance sector commitment letter on eliminating commodity-driven deforestation. It's really clear, I think, that we've come a long way since the New York Declaration back in 2014, and that investors are now equipping themselves and getting the right tools, the right data that they need to be able to translate this work into action. because we know that the issue of deforestation is just rapidly increasing. So the launch of the roadmap today really represents an important milestone. It comes about due to collective action, and it's a practical opportunity really to change direction, and it couldn't come at a more critical time. The roadmap really is the result of bringing together a number of different groups, which is important because no one set of actors can actually do this on their own. That's not possible. No one institution, no one single investor can do this on their own. So this effort really brings together investors, companies and civil society organisations led by the Global Canopy, and we thank them for all of their amazing work. And it does provide those tools that, as I said, that investors need. So we know deforestation is a systemic risk, and it's one that we all are accountable for and we all must work together. But I think this is such a historic moment, and it's great to be here to celebrate the launch of the roadmap, which we're going to hear more about.
Thank you so much, Fiona. So next up, my pleasure to introduce the Executive Director of Global Canopy, Nikki Mardas. And I have to honestly say that we wouldn't be here today without Global Canopy and the work that they did. So really, hats off to you, sir. Tell us how we're going to reach that roadmap. And there's some Global Canopy folks in the audience who can help anyone test pilot sort of the roadmap software if you'd like.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And what a team effort. I mean, thank you for that praise, but absolutely fantastic team effort, which is essential. So, I mean, what a platform that the UK presidency has given us for this event. I mean, I don't need to go back over it, but I mean, to hear the leaders from Brazil, from Russia, countries that haven't stepped up in this way before, I mean, that's just incredible. So, real achievement and such a good setting for today's event. And China too, right? Because we've got 25% of forest risk commodities going through China. So it can't be underestimated also how absolutely critical that is. And the finance that has been talked about is vital, the 20 billion mixed private and public. But all of that, as has been said by others, is dwarfed by, the 1 trillion roundabout of private finance, which is funding deforestation through supply chains, agricultural subsidies on top of that. And it's in that context that this commitment is so critical. And just to take a very quick view backwards, if I think back to 2009, we launched something called the Forest Footprint Disclosure Project. We went to companies with the backing of financial institutions. They were willing to give their signature to say to companies, what's your deforestation risk? Well, as you can imagine, we got a lot of blank looks in the boardroom. And at the time, financial institutions themselves really weren't willing to do more than put their signature on the piece of paper. You fast forward 10 years, and we had the dramatic fires in the Amazon. We had signatures by investors saying this has to stop. But then when we did a review of the policies that those investors had in place a year later, only 14% had good policies in place. So goodwill, but not necessarily clear on the how we move this forward and making the right kind of commitments. So that's the question that we've set out to address. What are the metrics? What is the guidance that can lead us forward to a meaningful set of policies and critically action that leads to outcomes? And so this is a roadmap that we're launching today that tries to answer those questions. It's modular, it's dynamic, we will keep updating it. It's not the finished article because we'll get more data on board. We're doing consultations. We've done a very large number already, but we'll keep improving it. And it's a roadmap of, it's a great roadmap, it's a roadmap of good enough because on the 80-20 rule, we now got 85% of the world's forests behind this. And we just need to move forward with what we've got and keep improving and keep going. And this covers deforestation, no conversion, and no human rights abuses. These topics have already been mentioned, but that's how we understand a deforestation commitment. And so you can go to the website, it's deforestationfreefinance.org. It lays out a 5-step process. It aims to meet financial institutions where they are, not where we wish they might be. It does link it to a 2025 goal, which is on the tempo of the commitment that has been made. But financial institutions come to it later, so be it. Then here's a roadmap that can be accelerated. You can move through it faster. So that's the way that we've tried to design it. There are 5 key steps. Phase 1, mapping risk. So work together, get together, understand the problems, share your influence, a critical piece of the puzzle. Number 2, on policies and managing that risk, detailed understanding through tools, but then set strong policies for the financial institution's actions itself and also expectations, critically, of the companies in portfolios. Both are extremely important. Number 3, engage and monitor. Engage. I mean, for us, this is all about engagement. It's all about not necessarily quickly exiting so that bad finance comes in, but engaging to get changes in behavior, and then on an annual basis, due diligence, so we keep checking, we keep making sure this isn't a one-hit wonder. We have to keep coming back for more. Number 4, disclose. Talk about it, shout about it. Transparency is critical if we're to win this battle. Can't be overstated, I'm sorry. So we need really good disclosure, and that's one of the ways that we're going to be measuring and monitoring what's being done. And finally, eliminating deforestation. I mean, engage, but if in the final analysis companies aren't moving, then we need to see finance being reallocated to more sustainable companies in the end game. And finally, go above and beyond, of course, nature positive, and the sectors of the future. There's an opportunity here, not just a risk. So I would invite you all, please, to visit the website deforestationfreefinance.org. There's a QR code that you can also use. We have a webinar on December the something, which the QR code will tell you all about. And just to end, we're going to use the roadmap to Minister Goldsmith's point. We're going to use the roadmap as a way of tracking for accountability year on year, to look at how these commitments, at least from the finance sector, are playing out. And we're sure that many others too, independently, will do the same, so that we have the eyes of the world on these commitments, as has been said. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, Nikki. That's great. So finally, I want to come to Jose Maria Pugas. And he came to us today, a couple of days ago from Rio. Heard you speak before. It's great to have a voice from the Global South. It's very important to have a voice from the Global South. Tell us why you're a partner at JGP Asset Management. Tell us why you're all in.
Perfect. I try to be brief because I know everyone wants to have lunch. So we are one of the largest asset management firms in Brazil. And there is not an easy time to be Brazilian, of course. But it's the only time we have. We are the first generation to really understand the impact and the responsibility we have over the transformation of the planet, negative or positive. And we, as financial sector, we are everywhere. There is no initiative, no company, no transaction in which we are not. So we have the major responsibility over all the sectors. There's no sector that has more responsibility on the good and the bad that happens globally. And when we are in Brazil, we are happy to be the inhabitants of the most diverse biomes in the world. So we have a major responsibility over the forest, Amazon, Cerrado, Mata Atlântica. We have so much of those heritage that's much before than we were there. We are just the one responsible to keep those biomes biodiverse, those biomes standing. We are just the temporary guardians of this richness. And when we saw 3 years ago that part of our financial activity has financed a natural disaster in Brazil, there was a wake-up call. It's not just economic. Of course, we lost a lot of money back then after this natural disaster. But it's much more important than that. It was us, partners, as persons, as human beings, that were committed we were feeling responsible about what we have done. We were not calculating, we were not diagnosing the risks correctly. But we can't only see deforestation and ESG as an economic risk, as a financial risk. We have to see it as a moral risk. It is an existential risk. And when we do that, it's totally different. It's not just a check the box practice or a platform of we gonna keep the bad boys outside. It's not that. It's much more of a moral commitment, a moral mission for all of us, for all of our 130 employees in JGP to do the right thing, to feel comfortable doing the investment, not defending that it's possible to be profitable and to preserve, and more than that, to restore. One thing that is very clear for us is that just to preserve is not enough. We have to restore. That's what we are doing right now. We have to finance the transition of the economy with this new perspective, in which we are just temporary. The real wealth is not money, is not what we are transacting, but what we are legacying for the next generations. That we have to legacy much better than when we were here with the first time. So when we see those commitments, those initiatives, it was not very hard for us to decide. It was very natural for us to decide. And it was very interesting because the first thing we do when we are committed to a new initiative is to talk to our experts and ask them, what's our skin in the game? How much money we are going to lose if we invest right now from the companies that are deforesting? And the answer was very funny because they say there will be no loss. Because our culture, since that accident 3 years ago, we're already committed to keep those bad boys away. And so I want to tell to the financial sector, there is not difficult to be deforestation free. It may seem difficult, but if you have a loss right now, be happy because you see that what you invested before, we're not doing bad things, we're not doing good things, we're not transforming positively the world. So take this opportunity to change, take this opportunity to make the future much better, assuming the responsibility we all have. So for us, it's a pleasure. For us, it's an honor to be the first Brazilian to sign, but also a sadness because we are the only one to sign. So my appeal to every asset management firm, to every financial institution in places such as Brazil, Colombia, Africa, in places where there is most of those biomes preserved and at risk, to commit on the deforestation-free finance, to commit on every kind of initiative that will make the future better.
Thank you, Jose Maria. I told you, he's great. We should put you on a road show, send you around the world, because you will be incredibly convincing to those who need to join as well. Look, I want to thank everyone for being here. I want to thank deeply our speakers and for your commitments, all of you, Lord Goldsmith, for your leadership, for the long work you've done. Thank you, Nikki. We're in it with you for the long run, and thank you for your leadership on that. I also want to acknowledge Mark Ferguson, who is a CI board member, but more importantly today, he is a co-founder and partner at Generation Investment, and they have signed this, they're leaders in this, so we've got others here in the audience as well. And I also just quickly want to shout out to Shaila Raghav and Stephanie Kimball on CI's team who've been tireless on this. Enjoy lunch. Thank you so much. Appreciate you all being here.